If you asked most people a decade ago what they thought the consequences of global warming would be for California, they would have likely mentioned sea level rise. After all, with over 800 miles of coastline and roughly two-thirds of its 40 million people living in coastal counties, it seemed as if flooding was the greatest danger to the state from the climate crisis. As it turns out, it's not. The problem, having to do with both temperature rise and corresponding wildly unpredictable weather and environmental conditions, has really hit home for Santa Barbara and the surrounding area. As the Washington Post article on California and its changing climate makes clear, and I'm quoting here, since 1895, the average temperature in Santa Barbara County has warmed by 2.3 degrees Celsius, according to the Post analysis. Neighborhooding Ventura has heated up even more, with an average temperature rise of 2.6 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times. Ventura thus ranks as the fastest warming county in the lower 48 states. Warming here already has exceeded the threshold set by the 2015 Climate Accord, which President Barack Obama signed, and the Trump administration has promised to leave. That agreement concluded that the average warming should be held within well below 2 degrees Celsius to avoid potentially catastrophic consequences. But it has already warmed by more than 1 degree Celsius on average across the globe, and astonishingly beyond that 2 degrees Celsius in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. I should note that this article is based on the Post's analysis of temperature rise in Santa Barbara and Ventura County since 1895. According to the explanation in the methodology section at the end of the article, data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, forms the basis of the study. However, to my knowledge, there are no peer-reviewed collaborating studies in support of the conclusions that undergird the article regarding the above-mentioned temperature rise. This is not to say that Wilson and the article are wrong, but simply to make you aware of this potential issue. It's very clear the temperature is going up a lot, just not quite clear how much yet. With such extraordinary temperature increase, all sorts of impacts follow. For example, fires are now a reality of life due to the dry conditions and lack of rain. The 2017 Thomas Fire at Santa Barbara at 281,000 acres was the largest wildfire to date in California history. And this is not an isolated problem, as the article notes. A quarter of California's 40 million residents now live in high-risk fire zones. And it's not just fires, as the article reveals. What some Californians call global weirding has resulted in strange midday temperatures soaring to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, and then dropping down very quickly to much colder temperatures at night, killing scores of livestock and scorching orchards. But I want to share something with you personally, something that happened when I was writing this little lecture. So I wrote the above paragraphs, which explain that California would likely experience far more than just sea level rise as a result of climate change. On Christmas morning, 2019, my plan was to come back the next day and finish this lecture. But that night, my phone flashed with an alert that a rotating storm cell was off the coast of Santa Barbara, moving in quickly, and that the city needed to immediately brace for a tornado. Everyone was advised to take shelter in their homes and, as the alert said, move to an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building, avoid windows. Since I live in a rickety little Santa Barbara house built in 1928 and am the father of a 4-year-old daughter, this was, to be honest, pretty damn scary. While a tornado did not hit Santa Barbara that night, the National Weather Service confirmed that one touched down in the nearby Ventura Harbor and that it was generated by a second rotating storm cell. Now, if you live in another state or another part of the world, this may not seem like a big deal. But the central coast of California is just one of a few true Mediterranean climates on the planet. As I never tire of telling my students, the ancient Romans had a name for this sort of welcoming climate. They called it a locus amenus, a pleasant place. For thousands of years, people across the world have wistfully pined for such perfect pastoral climate, with none of the temperature variations or various storms that most of the planet experiences. While a small handful of tornadoes, and very small ones, are recorded in Santa Barbara area, they're extraordinarily rare and generally altogether insignificant. The two rotating storm cells capable of generating dangerous tornadoes formed during one storm is exceptionally unusual, at least as far as I know, although I'm not a meteorologist, may well be unprecedented. I mention this because it underscores that climate change will likely produce a range of consequences that, like tornadoes in new areas, may well be altogether unexpected, as those tornadoes were. This is not the fault of predictive computer models produced by climate scientists, but rather to underscore that, in addition to the sorts of things that we can model and expect, like protracted drought that set the stage for wildfires, there may be a range of other things that we just don't see coming. And this is not just limited to the physical consequences of climate change, like drought, fire, tornadoes, but even more so when the human implications are taken into account. For example, California produces almost half of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables grown in the U.S. It's amazing, and it's true. If there were significant change to the climate of this region, it could have profound consequences for the food supply and hence food security of the United States. Knowing that I work on the climate crisis, people used to regularly ask me when climate change, was going to happen. In the past decade, fewer and fewer people ask me that every year. The reason is obvious. The climate crisis is now here. And I don't just mean on a global sense. The climate crisis has now come home everywhere, even to Santa Barbara, California. I'm curious to hear what you make of the situation and the Washington Post article laying out the details of it.